Welcome to another video here on the Critical Focus channel. Before we get started, I would like to thank all my wonderful members that support my work. Every penny goes straight into new minis, new paint, equipment and whatnot. Your support means a lot. If you are not yet a member, what you can expect from a future membership is access to the member Discord, early access to videos, member deck review, and just generally a greater influence on the content I put out. I will surely add more features to the member side of things as I progress as well. Welcome to another update on the new edition of Warhammer Underworlds. So okay, a lot of new information on the new edition has seen the light of day since my last video, but I really haven't had the time to sit down and do a proper update before now, so here we go. Both to confirm some of the suspicions I had from the last video, as well as dropping some completely new information, and some things I probably got wrong, so let's clear all the things up. First up, Warbands. We didn't actually know if the game was going to be backwards compatible in any great sense at the time of my last video. We now know that all current warbands will be playable in the new edition via digital and or physical support via updated fighter cards and war scrolls. We now definitely know that warband decks is a thing of the past, and with them all that lovely card art that I used a lot while doing lore videos as well, so very sad to see them go. Gone are also the 2-board setup, so all your current boards are now obsolete. But I theorized in the last video that the 1-board setup would mean no territories, but that has now been shown to be incorrect. I'm not really a fan of the no man's territory being so vaguely defined on the boards though, with it previously being super clear when attaching the boards with the shaded area making up no man's land. I mean, you can still count the hexes and get there, and in due time you will learn on the fly to see what's what, but I don't think that really is something that is making the game more accessible and easy as an isolated thing. On the subject of fighter cards, all of them have apparently been retuned and updated with bounty, something I mentioned in the last video, namely giving us the information how much glory each fighter is worth taking out of action. So your existing fighter cards are most likely also obsolete, but I guess the real positive here is that all your plastic toy soldiers are still good to go. A huge relief for me personally that owns every warband to date. Let's talk war scrolls. The war scrolls are the things replacing your warband decks, pretty much as well as like any cool reactions, actions, etc. on your individual fighter cards. So let's be honest, this is a very washed down version of a warband deck. When you take into account that the fighter cards as well are less unique now, with no named attacks, no reactions, actions, etc. on the individual cards. Is it necessarily a bad thing though? Well, as all things, I guess it depends. Some older warbands might actually get more identity now. Warbands that didn't have much going on their fighter cards and needed to be built very heavily with universal decks might actually get more identity now, something like Iron Skull's Boys for example. While warbands like Sondara's, with a very thematic deck and a unique mechanic, might realistically stand to lose quite a bit of that uniqueness. But it all remains to be seen, of course. Let's deep dive into the war scrolls and sort out what's what here. One side is all lore and images on the fighters with numbers going along with the names so that you can clearly identify them. Flip side is all the mechanics, the inspire condition, and any abilities that can be used once per game, once per round, etc. Some of these abilities have a lightning symbol next to them, meaning they are search abilities, not to confuse with search objectives, but it does mean a certain event triggers their usability straight away. Some have the core symbol, meaning you use them as an action. On the right side of all of them is a little circle where you can put a token to represent you've used them, or if you prefer the other way around, I guess. Pretty neat. Looking at the inspire square over in the top left corner here, most likely this means that all fighters in a warband will inspire the same way. I don't see a war scroll card having like 5 or 6 different squares with unique inspired conditions. So gone are most likely the days when Grisel's Arena, for example, all had different inspire mechanics. In a way, I think this is a bit sad, but not a terrible decision, as missing inspire windows was certainly a thing when you had to keep track of 5 or 6 different inspire mechanics. But I think it's a bit of an identity loss personally. Tokens seem to remain mostly the same, with the addition of numbered wounds and glory tokens, which I think is a positive. Having less little cardboard thingies floating around your gaming area is a win for me. Crits now don't negate all non-crit successes, but rather just counts as a regular success. So it was even harsher a nerf than I anticipated really, but it can still have a very impactful part to play, They can still trigger weapon abilities such as Grievous, I guess, if that's still a thing. And the two new mechanics, Overrun and Stand Fast. Overrun is a crit effect for attacks, meaning that if you have more crits than the defender, after the driveback step, you can push your fighter into the hex the defender occupied before the attack. This is not an entirely new mechanic. Reactionary upgrades could do similar things before. And yeah, I like it. I think it's very thematic and could be very impactful, pushing you onto an objective the defender was standing in, for example, or just simply getting you into a territory you needed to be in to score certain cards, for example. More crits in the defense, on the other hand, means you can trigger Stand Fast, that negates drive back and reduces the damage from the attack with -1. Do note that it doesn't say, at least not here, down to a minimum of 1. So this is pretty huge and a greater effect than the crit attack effect, but in most cases you will roll more dice in attacks than defense, so I guess it's fair that the defensive effect is stronger than the offensive one. We also, alongside with the staple actions of old, have gotten a new one, Focus, which means you can discard any number of cards, objectives and or power cards, and draw replacement cards for those, and on top of that, 1 extra power card. This is the anti-brick mechanic they teased us about in the preview show. Discarding or drawing cards isn't a new thing, but being able to do so from both piles and multiple cards at once is a huge change, and one that I am cautiously optimistic about. Discarding objectives isn't a great strategy when you overdo it anyways, as ideally you want to score most of your objective cards, so I don't really see overusing this being a thing. Let's see how it pans out. I don't see super bricked hands being a major issue with the slimmed down deck building element now anyways. Talking more game mechanics, we knew that a lot of simplifying and streamlining was coming our way. Some of it, for most people I think, like reaction windows and chains being kind of cluttered, some very welcome changes. But some, like the removal of magic dice as we see here, for me personally a very sad one. My YouTube channel's name is after all based on the 3 results on the magic dice, so rather a sad day to see that go. And just the feeling of rolling different dice with different colors once in a while was a nice one that felt a little bit special. I really hope that the war scrolls of the magically focused warbands is impactful enough to still evoke that feeling of magic being present in the game. One that I feel less salty about is losing Barge. Okay, bye. Underdog. This is a major feature in Spearhead and AOS with extra command points and buffed twists for underdogs, and it wasn't a great surprise really seeing it come into the Underworlds as well. We've kind of had an underdog thing before during the primacy meta, with cards like Everything to Prove and Underdog being staples to counter primacy builds, but this is a rather different beast and a core mechanic. It's not really specified when Underdog is determined here though, most likely it is at the start of the round to mirror Spearhead and AOS, but it doesn't actually say more than the player that has less glory is the underdog, which would imply, if you read it just as it stands here, that the underdog can shift during the course of a round as well, but that's probably gonna be cleared up pretty soon. In terms of effect, the underdog will break ties in the roll-off and also get buffed effects from certain cards like Healing Potion and Hidden Paths as seen here. It seems like a light enough effect in my opinion, as I've always had some concerns with such mechanics being too strong. The underdog mechanic for certain twists in Spearhead, for example, are very strong and sort of makes you want to lose the previous round with a single point rather than score as much as possible, which I think is not great. Well, that is pretty much it with all the new information I have so far, but I will keep you updated as soon as I have anything more. Make sure to like the video and subscribe on your way out, and do leave a comment, as I'd love having an engaged community as we head into Embergard and the future of Warhammer Underworlds. Take care and have a great rest of your day.